Always the same.
All right, hello everyone. We're just going to wait until it goes live on LinkedIn and YouTube.
I'm actually curious about this because we don't know where all this goes, right? Because we've only noticed that it comes on live after some time on some of these channels we know. But where do these missing seconds go?
Well, they go into this big store of time that the universe has, and that's how people manage to find kind of like time to do other things, because they like take it from us. And
all right, so we're live on YouTube.
Good.
Okay.
The same.
What? We are live on LinkedIn. So
welcome to the Shit Show.
So, wow, great. So if you've just joined us, you've missed all the parts where we told you everything about the Epstein files. But thank you for joining us right now anyway.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Shit Show. Hang on. I forget how this works. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, let's back up. 3, 2, 1. Andrea, go.
Welcome to the Shit Show. My name's Andrea Edwards.
My name's David Coe.
My name's Richard Pizzolotto, and I'm bottom left today, live from Italy.
And my name is Joe Augustin. Welcome to the show that's trying to make sense of the polycrisis. Of course, if you haven't come to terms with what the polycrisis is, think about everything that's wrong in the world and everything that seems to be connected with everything else, and that's what we call the polycrisis. So we're trying to untangle that. Admittedly, it's a big task, and we always try to get it done within 1 hour. But that's why we have a 2.5-hour show now. So there we go. The Shit Show also tries to look at different perspectives from all over the place. So I just realized it sounded very thrown away. Hello?
In a word, that's the Shit Show.
Yeah. So we get diverse voices as well to bring them onto the show, so we can have a more interesting perspective on what we're looking at as well. So while you are, by the way, liking and subscribing and sharing this with your friends, I'm going to introduce our guest today. She is a seasoned C-level technology executive with over 3 decades of leadership experience at companies like Microsoft, Cisco, Here Technologies, Sage, and Citrix. Her career has spanned 4 continents, from Bulgaria to Singapore, from London to Dubai, where she has built businesses and transformed organizations while developing deep cultural intelligence and understanding of global markets. Today, she channels this extensive experience through Rask Tech, providing interim leadership and strategic advisory services to organizations navigating critical transitions while also pursuing her passion for building communities and sharing insights from her global investment and business experience. This is Stanimira Kuleva.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to join you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here.
Yeah.
So Stanimira and I actually go way back. We used to work together at Microsoft, and she was my favorite executive, and still is. But do you want to just give everyone a little bit more context about you? So originally from Bulgaria.
Yeah, originally from Bulgaria, and at the time when I grew up, Bulgaria was part of the Eastern Bloc in Europe, Eastern Economic Bloc, and it was specializing in silicon and IT technology within that group, within that bloc. And so I'm one of these products of where investments in IT, education, computer science, and stuff like that was heavily focused, and I benefited from, the fact that I grew up in a system which allowed equal access to education and participation in STEM disciplines, etc. And it's been the passion ever since. Working in technology has been my passion, and it still keeps me going. Also, I've worked and lived through a couple of fairly major transitions in technology, and it's always very exciting, and these cycles are accelerating as well. So had the chance to live and work in different places, and this is what Andrea was mentioning. We worked together at Microsoft in Singapore. I was running part of their business for Asia Pacific at the time, and I've spent equal amounts of time living between Europe and Singapore mainly. But operated and kind of worked out of places like Australia and US, and pretty much global citizen. I would say, in addition of being a passionate technologist.
But also a passionate community builder. That's the other side of you that people who know you're famous for it. You build communities around the world that sort of support each other. You're renowned for it.
Even our connection, right? I mean, we met probably about 10 years ago, Andrea, and we still find it quite fascinating to meet each other and exchange over topics and stay in touch and all this. I think it's a major asset in our lives, meeting people and keeping these connections going and sharing. I think value exchange in that sense, sharing ideas, sharing knowledge, sharing experience is a very important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you get into Stanimira's orbit, you are well loved and taken care of. So I can recommend it. So let's get stuck into the interview, because I know you can't be here with us all day.
Well loved. We do love and passion.
Oh, we're just having an internet seizure. I think you said something nice about me, so that was a show.
Something about owing you a bottle of wine or something, I think it was.
Yeah. Are you with us?
Yeah.
I am.
We're
I think
back
talking
from the
about
little
technology
glitch, I
got
think.
my. I know. Talking about technology, I think got my Wi-Fi tired. It just went off.
Now,
we're back.
We did a show with Dubai yesterday. We had some issues as well, so happens.
Oh, it could be a Dubai thing, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It could be, in fact, yeah, because I'm noticing that it's okay most of the times, but it has moments of bit of outages for some reason. I don't know why. They need to invest in a little bit more infrastructure, I think. I'm subscribing with Etisalat, and they're the biggest provider here, but you would expect slightly better than this.
Well, so one of our friends in Dubai yesterday.
I have to come in and out sometimes. Compliments of.
We'll manage it. All right. You have been in the technology sector for more than 3 decades. You've worked globally, as you were just talking about. And you've seen it all. And we've been through a lot of hype cycles in that time. So we had the internet hype cycle, obviously was a big one, the dot-com boom and bust. We've had cloud, which was very much the big story of the time when we were at Microsoft. Big data. I mean, nobody even talks about big data anymore. But I wanted to ask you, how do you think AI is different?
Oh, that's a good question. It's probably very topical. We've been living in a bit of a AI storm of late, in every sense. I would add to the list you just went through, Andrea. With internet boom and then the dot-com, which was connected to internet boom and bust, and then we had the cloud, but before that we had mobility. And I think mobility, cloud, data, big big things, right? And if you just think in the history in the last 30 years, it's been the cycles are accelerating. So there's major new innovation coming and changing, the way we work, the way we live, the way we play, etc. Now, if you think about it, or the way I think about it is, it really started with much more of an underlying enablement technologies in advancements. And particularly cloud is a major such advancements, where it makes compute and data storage available in abundance, not as much abundance as ChatGPT and LLM technologies need these days, obviously, clearly, by all the big investments that are going now in building additional data center capacity and all this. However, the way AI is different, I believe, is it came upon us very rapidly. So the first time we started seeing LLM in actions, etc., it was less than 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, right, when we started seeing it and talking about it, and the level of adoption and impact it had in a very short period of time is quite amazing, in fact. And I was going to share a few things. I'm closely watching the impact on business, and which in turn also impacts our workforce in general. And what I see with AI is much faster adoption, much bigger impact. And I believe it's different than the previous big technology leaps in a way that it's much closer to our business process. So it just speaks directly of, the workflows, the way we do work directly. It impacts each and every one of us. And so to me, that's very different than just building compute, for example, or making mobile available. Even mobile affected us a lot as consumers and as employees. But AI is just so much more, pretty much everywhere. And it has much closer impact and much more direct impact on the way we work.
Yeah, right. So it's not the tools or the plumbing in the background. It's actually at the front doing our jobs. Okay.
Yeah, it's not the plumbing. It's actually the water that goes in the plumbing. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The water. That's a nicer way of saying it. And we could say something else in the plumbing, but which brings me nicely to the next section. So I'm keeping an eye on it for different reasons, right? But I'm hearing a lot of the tech insiders, obviously anonymously, but they're basically calling bullshit on AI. I know that you work at the executive level. What are you seeing?
I see that it's real. I see it as a real major impact on us. I see a major transformation coming as a result of it. Many jobs will be changed forever. The way we do things, the way we enhance our own productivity. And so to me, sitting on the fence and trying to judge it or saying, oh, yeah, it's not, every day or every hour you spend being negative and being a skeptic with regards to, is this for real, is an hour or a day we miss in adopting it and in figuring out how that's going to work for us and how that's going to make us better and faster and more productive and smarter, for example, in terms of accessing information in an easier way or communicating better. So to me, it's very real. And we already see the evidence of impact on everyone. So, yeah, I'm not a skeptic.
No, and I know that you've just made Joe a very happy man because he's been saying that for a long time, and he's also the guy that convinced me to embrace it, even though the environmental impact is something that concerns me greatly. So, but we were talking about jobs, and I think this is a really important part of the conversation. Jobs, so entry-level jobs, and you've got a son. Entry-level jobs are going because of AI. People, especially people in their 50s, are really, really starting to panic about jobs, which they're not necessarily linking to AI, but there's a panic in that sort of generation. So I think could we sort of really try and understand, what do you think? Like if you can use AI to enhance your job, at what point do you no longer make any sense to even be in the job? So what's happening there? What are the sort of jobs and what sort of timeline are we talking about?
Well, that's a big question. So we can tackle it in many facets. I think the lifelong learning is a major quality for us as humans that should help through all these major transitions like this one, which is upon us. And to the previous point, to say, do we want to spend time denying it and questioning it, or we embrace it and we figure out how to make it work? To me, what jobs are going to be affected first, it's jobs which can be easily automated, right? Because these are the jobs that mundane tasks, which actually we have been tackling with other technologies like, kind of robotics, automation, and before the big AI onset. So these are the jobs that had been constantly targeted as fully automated, getting fully automated. So in other words, we have to hone into skills and knowledge and thinking, which is only to us humans, right? In our creativity, our ability to apply different ways of ensuring the outcome that we are supposed to deliver as employees or in our personal life. And so to me, we are going to see a lot of the back office work that happens today around, I don't know, automation in accounting, automation in data analytics, various other jobs which are essentially with a fairly little value add. These are
Yeah, but now you're back.
Am I with you guys?
Yeah. It was all right.
Yeah,
so
you
the
definitely
back
are.
office, back office jobs.
Back office jobs, accounting,
Yeah, that
automation,
Yeah.
data analytics. These things can be done much faster and better, by algorithms. And we, in our own development, have to focus on skills, knowledge, creativity, ways of applying ourselves as humans that is very difficult to program or copy. We keep talking about the general intelligence and all this, but I'm a believer that we as humans will remain unique. And so with that sense, understanding what is upon us and looking at the implications on each and every one of us of what we do today, I think we have to ask ourselves hard questions as well to say, okay, can half of what I do today be done much better and faster by the computer? Or, without me, the quality is not going to be there. And there is a role of us using AI tools in ensuring we do mundane things faster. However, we need to be there and ensure that the quality of the outcome is there as well. Because, and technology is developing very fast, but I'm sure all of us, having tried tools like ChatGPT, etc., they're still at the level of maturity and intelligence of probably teenager, if you think about it, in terms of, the ability to understand, contextualize, and present the information back. So
can we just?
You asked me how fast.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask you. So, the back office work, right? So, a lot of the back office work is done in countries like India. So I worry about the developing world. A lot of the automation can be done in the developing world, and they're also talking about it as solving the aging crisis. But then, I've talked to my boys about jobs that they should be looking at that I think have the human element, and one of them is mental health. But now we find out that mental health is being handled by AI too, in terrible ways, but also people are extremely positive about it because they can't get access. So, I like there's going to be this period where there's a lot of loss of jobs, and there'll be a lot of desperation before we move into the point where we work out how to manage it. So I think there's going to be a crisis point in society, So that really worries me, especially in the developing world. Automating all of those jobs that get outsourced to China, India, Bangladesh, Cambodia, how's that going to impact those economies and their growth, and what's that bigger impact on the world? That's one of my concerns about it.
And the numbers, Andrea, are there to prove that you're right to be concerned. I was recently looking at the future of work reports, or future of the jobs report by the World Economic Forum for 2025. It's done together with McKinsey. And what you find there is that globally, we're at the lowest unemployment percentage since 1991. I think the number is about 4.9%. It was, I need to look it up, but it was the lowest. And however, when you double click on it, what you discover is that the unemployment is going down rapidly in the developed countries. However, employment is alarmingly growing up among the young and among the markets, in the emerging markets, particularly
we're just having a little tech issue here with your feed for a minute. Give it a chance. Are you there? All right, there you are. You're back.
Yeah, she's back.
So it's the lower. It's the lowest at 4.6%. But what's it looking at in the future? Or you were talking about youth.
So what I was talking is at a global level, unemployment is at the lowest level since 1991. However, the unemployment trend in the emerging markets is the opposite, i.e. the unemployment there is on the rise, and it's, I think, 5.3 or 5.4% of unemployment. And among both, there are pockets where unemployment can be as high as 13%. So, and the other trend, which is alarming, is there is an increase in unemployment among women in emerging markets, which is in my mind supports what you said, like the worry about what we are going to see. I would think that these trends are going to persist for some time while we are going through that transition in terms of what can be automated and what that means for the workforce and the skills profile in different markets. In that same report, they have interviewed 1,000 employers in 55 countries and among, I think, in 26 different industries. And what that statistics show is that 83% of them, so they asked them what are the biggest trends and the biggest transformation they expect to see in their business. And these are larger employers. Trend number one, with 83% of them thinking this is going to be a major impact, is AI and automation, information automation. So, second thing is digital access, which is positive for the emerging markets. And third thing is robotics, which will also eliminate some of the low-end physical, kind of deskless type of workforce roles.
So I was just going to ask David, Richard, or Joe if you want to jump in and give Stanimir a bit of a break. I was going to say the other thing I was going to ask is, of course, so I'll put you in, Joe, but as the boomers start to retire, the jobs numbers may be growing, but they won't. But there's going to be less jobs, so that's kind of another thing at play here as well, right?
Well, if it's to me, I mean, I'm saying that the trouble with the future is it's hard to write it with the pen of the past, right? It moves so quickly now that if you try to draw or imagine the future using your own experience, you can't. We were talking about kids the other day and what their future, what they may be facing, is that some of the stuff that used to be the easy answers to success, what's a successful career, you just can't rely on anymore, right? If you say pursue being a doctor, pursue being a lawyer, it's mission, I won't say mission number one, but it's very high up on the list there in terms of what AI is trying to, or the people who are doing it are trying to replace. They're trying to take things which are highly informationally based, which is medicine and law, for instance, and change the way fundamentally we do it. They're not trying actively to replace people, but they're playing in that space. But the playing in that space changes the way it works, right? So radiologists, for instance, they're definitely not as relevant as they used to be. I mean, you study very hard to try to get used to be able to. The whole point of being a radiologist is you see a lot, you study a lot, so you see things and you can see patterns. And AI is much more suited to that. And even in terms of performance, they're much better at it. It's much better at it. So the future is, on one hand, hard to see, but on the other hand, what I see is actually it is so wide open, because there is a different kind of thing to think about, right? What happens when a world doesn't need you to do certain things? And I know that sounds terrible. You go like, well, no one needs me to do this. Yeah, I go like, well, okay, now if you can stop doing the things that we used to need people to do things, what would you start trying to do, right? Maybe we get a chance to figure out what it is that we could do better, right? I mean, if you think about what I hear from many people who are at work, they're not happy to be at work. They're there because they have to be at work, and that's the thing that needs to happen. What if ultimately we change all that? What if you don't need to be at work? What if all you have is then the environment around you and the community around you, and then you have lots of, and let's say your only problem then is, oh, now we got to fix the environment. Yeah. It's a possibility, right? And so that's the kind of thing that I kind of look at as well. But on the flip side, with regards to things about saying what AI can't do, I push back quite hard on that, actually, in terms of I think people are very happy to try AI in the least powerful version of it. They don't come in with 10 incredible prompts and then to be amazed by it. What they do is they try something very basic and they let AI fail and they go like, there you go, it doesn't really work that well. I think if you want to test AI, get an AI expert who is with you and throw a challenge. And if you like, digitally arm wrestle with AI and see how good it really is. One of the jobs that I'm very sure that will be replaced and soon, and very soon as well, actually, is the job of CEO. It's not as secure as people think, right? Because if you think what the main job of it is, it's about making decisions and making decisions in the right direction. It may not have wisdom, but it can. If it's a CEO of the right kind of company, AI can make very fast decisions and make very quick actions as well. And like human beings, they'll make their mistakes. But if they make a bigger number of correct decisions versus bad ones, I think the company will win as well.
I agree with a lot of what Joe's saying, in especially in terms of kind of where you find your presence. But I think we've got this the wrong way around. I think we're looking at jobs fundamentally in terms of that kind of unit of labor. And therefore it can be replaced, and therefore we are now without purpose. I think the real question is, what do we really want jobs to be about? And how do we want that to be the case? And Andrea mentioned about, effectively that's sort of the human touch element and so on. We forget we are the economy. We determine it. And it's not that the economy determines us. So all of these job numbers, of these job trends, of these kind of, oh my God, there are no jobs for this and so on, is putting the economy above us. That's not the case. I mean, that's what Richard and I, our game of Thrive is really all about, is to realize that actually we are the genuine creators and agents of the economy. And it's up to us to determine what jobs are for and how it engages us as to how it realizes our own genius and allow our own spark to fly. And if we keep talking about AI in the way that it's being talked about here, we are actually diminishing ourselves with it. we're not doing AI service, and we're definitely not doing ourselves a service.
Yeah. I'm just concerned about the lack of thought that's going into the future. But we didn't cover the time frame of change, Stanimira. So, you're saying it's like a teenager now. It only took it 2 years to become a teenager. So
yeah, but I do agree. I do agree with what Joe I'm still learning how to ask smart questions and create the right prompts, etc. The one thing I do not agree with when Joe says, like, let's surround ourselves with an AI expert. I would say we probably all need to be AI experts somehow, right? And to the point that David was mentioning around building, kind of in control of our own destiny and using AI as one of our helpers or someone that enhances us and makes us more productive or let us do something that we like better, is probably the right line of thought. And I felt very strongly actually when Joe was expressing his thoughts about impact on jobs and stuff like that, that somehow we need to be the economy. The humans will be the ones, right, that determine what we want to be and what the next phase should be. It has to be in our hands. I strongly believe that. And I think we should not fear the future. We certainly need to learn how to read it better, open our imagination of what that should look like. Timeframes are fast. If I go by that same report that I mentioned, if we think when the first tools became available, let's say 2022, 2023 framework, time frame, now we are talking 83% of the businesses stating it, that they have some sort of investment happening in around AI technology, which means that, and we know, we spoke earlier this year about, okay, there are pilots, not all of them are successful, it's very limited adoption, and it's true. In some parts of the businesses, people try out stuff and they don't like what they get as an outcome of it. But there are instances where we see a massive impact already in terms of production. I was listening to a famous or an infamous interview of the CFO of OpenAI. By the way, it's an interview of 40-something minutes, which is available on YouTube. But it is an interview with Wall Street Journal, I think just recently, about a couple of weeks ago. And she was sharing some of their commercial engagements with one of the big pharma companies. The one that stood out for me was there was a commercial engagement with a pharma company where they were able to reduce their R&D, like drug discovery cycle, from whatever number of years down to months. And more importantly, the FDA approval process, which requires you to fill out, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of various forms and provide all sorts of data and all this to support the approval process of a new drug. This one is like shortened by 60% or 70%. So essentially, it starts impacting quite a lot of how work gets done. And I see it as I see it as a good thing. We just need to make sure that we use it to the best of our advantage as humans.
Yeah. So use it for the good things. So I suppose that's the question. What do you see as the possibilities for the technology in the coming years? So obviously the drug cycle, that's a real positive. Can you think of other things? I mean, we talked about medicine, like radiology, like Joe was saying. I'm sure once it gets 100% accuracy, that's it. Humans are out.
Radiology.
Well, I'll just jump in there because it dropped out. But just
Well,
the idea of
maybe.
Sorry, but anyway, carry on. Go ahead, Stanimara.
The possibilities.
We had a glitch there. I
Yeah, the
think we're back.
possibilities. Actually, this thing with can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, we got you.
If you keep talking, you will catch up.
Okay. Okay. It will run after me. The Wi-Fi bits and bytes.
Yes.
Joe, when you were talking about this radiology example, right? I mean, this is so fascinating. I had this meeting with a lady from, actually an ex-colleague from Cisco. She was a CEO of a small startup in China. And what they developed, and that was, I'm talking about 3 or 4 years ago, before the big, boom of LLM and all this. They were just using the basic AI and automation,
machine learning,
right? And image processing. Machine learning and image processing.
So we can hear you.
Can you guys you guys hear me?
Yep. Now you're back. Now you're back.
We're going to get through this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's more dramatic with the big pauses.
Sorry about that. I don't know if I may need to change location. Yeah. Let me try and see if I can move somewhere else.
All right.
Okay.
You know we could do, Stanimara. If it feels more comfortable, we could always just switch to your phone.
Okay. Yes. Tell me.
Yeah, so Stanimara, if it works better for you, maybe even just jump to your phone. I think it will probably work a little bit better.
Let's see if this works first.
Yeah, we get a tour. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's see if switching works. How about that? Sorry, say that again.
So far, it's working very well at the moment. So yeah, let's try this and see if it works.
Are you Bitcoin mining in the background? Is that what's going on? Okay.
So I was talking about my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not, unfortunately. I'd love to. Even though the current price trends are not so positive. I was talking about sharing my conversation with this friend of mine from China, who is the CEO of a startup, which at that time had a great product combining image processing and machine learning, and analytics. To your point, to your example about impact on radiology, Joe, and they were in a number of tests at that time with various cancer hospitals and healthcare providers. And they were showing some amazing, so they were able to prove that using their image processing and applying machine learning and analytics on top of it was delivering 70% higher accuracy in detecting some very specific type of cancers. I think it was some sort of lung cancer that they were targeting at that time. And it was just astonishing to see how, and to me, we can't put everything, kind of paint it with a broad brush. But I believe if we harness the power of these technologies in the right context, applied on the right data, help it with the right modeling and the right specialization by industry, by use case, and allow it to train and develop, it can be a great help, I think. I don't know what that radiologists that would have done better in terms of. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I add, interject a bit to that, and back to the point I was trying to say. I watched Radioactive on Netflix. It's a film about Marie Curie, and there was a part in it project where she helps to create these mobile X-ray units. This is during the, I think, First World War. And, you know, before this, people didn't know on the battlefield whether you just sprained your ankle or whether you took a bullet and so on. So there were all these amputations that were happening, and young men were basically losing their limbs left, right, and center. But with this, it really helped, and it made a huge difference.
Mm.
But the point is, we still fight the war. The point is, even with the technology that helps, it just allows us to go and fight the war even more. And it's not actually addressing what we are as humans. I think if we don't start thinking about that, we're getting this all wrong. And that's where I find all the conversations about AI disappointing, because they're not actually bringing us to ask what are humans. And I want to bring up Society 5.0, which is kind of Japan's technology policy. Richard and I wrote about this in The Unsustainable Truth. And there they had a don't list. And it says, don't put technology first, don't put the economy first, and don't put the expert first. And that's interesting for a technology policy for Japan in that way. And it says, be guided by a human-centered approach. Be guided by being open and inclusive and sustainable, and being guided by being experimentation-driven. Now, that's a very different perspective in terms of how we may want to talk about AI, because I think we are holding the wrong conversations. We're talking about functionally how it is better, and we're losing the sacredness of what it means to be human.
Yeah, across the board. So, and we've got the tech broligarchs leading the way. So the trust is not there, obviously, in the people who are leading what's happening. But I totally agree with you, David. But Stanimir, any thoughts?
I'm actually quite fascinated by what David shared. How is that for a technology policy? It's amazing how you change the conversation and how you actually apply the right lens to it, right? The one that stood out for me is experimentation driven, right? Experimentation driven helps us to stay ahead or stay on top of, what's available.
Someone's mute.
Okay,
Yeah.
we will get through this.
Of course we will.
Yeah. Experimentation driven.
I want to add, if I may, actually, while we, to what Andrea's talking about.
What I was saying is the one thing that I picked on from what David was sharing is that experimentation driven is one of these policies, and that keeps us on things, right, and ahead of the game in terms of understanding what each one of us will get out of whatever technology is available to us.
All right, paused again. Do you want to jump in, David? Just for getting the back.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the when you talk about the tech bros and the companies and so on, one of the points towards the finish of my new book, Thriving at Nature's Pace, I talk about global commons. And one of the things that is very clear is that whole industries of companies really need to be viewed as global commons. And in the book, I talk specifically in terms of kind of the fossil fuel industry, the oil and the gas and the coal companies in what they do. And there are lots of kind of extractive and other industries which apply, and to the extent of kind of where we want to think about the AI and all the rest, and to the point of kind of, what Joe talks about in terms of kind of the huge Star Trekian benefits in that way. I think you don't get there unless you're able to view companies as global commons. And that's a very different kind of ownership structure as to what it implies. And in the book, I talk about the sort of ownership structure that you can actually create, how it can actually work in that way. We end up fighting the wrong battle in trying to say, how can we make the individuals who are the founders and the private equities that are the owners and the pensions who are feeding the money into the private equities and that cycle, how can we make all that work in a very hubristic world? And we're kind of losing the whole meaning of how what we can actually ourselves put in there. And again, that leads to the experimentation, because we're not going to get there in one step. That's the point. Everybody wants that single one big magic bullet that does it. And that misses the whole point, that actually nature doesn't go around and change from a rainforest to, kind of like a different kind of ecosystem in one fell swoop. It does it in tiny, tiny steps.
You know what, David? Exactly, and now in the cloud world and all this, what we are saying in technology is fail fast.
I'm hearing fail.
I start again.
Welcome to Guess the Word.
No.
Was it fail fast, or? Because I hate that saying. What were you saying?
It was fail. It was fail fast.
Yeah.
It was fail.
I only hate it because
I was just trying to
it's
build
been...
upon what David was sharing about getting.
No, go.
Yeah,
So we're obviously behind you too.
I was just saying that's how it goes, right? You fail fast, you learn fast, you start again, next time better, and this is how the iterations go. And I fully agree. We're not going to get there.
We also need one other element, though, and there's an element we miss. We also need one other element, which goes back to that comment before about the economy. What really is it? And it goes to this spiritual element of ourselves, what I call a spiritual belonging. What is my own mission and purpose? How do I combine that with my economic living to create genuine presence for myself? And when you think about that, an actor on a stage with no audience has no presence. It's how we interact with each other that gives us our presence in that way. And when whether we nourish them or whether we steal from them, that gives us the kind of presence that we may have, and that kind of opens up our own questions of what that calling and mission might be. And if we don't start conversations from that side, you're stuck in this world where you fear the functional and the loss of the functional. And you never be able to cross over in that way.
All right, so I am keeping an eye on the time, and why does it keep even StreamYard's playing around with me? I want to talk about DEI, because I know that's been a part of your life as a female leader. We've had some funny conversations about it. So obviously Trump turned it all on its head, and we know that the way it's been applied hasn't always been the right way, but throwing it all out and going in the opposite direction isn't the right way either. So what are you seeing from a change there from a DEI perspective? Because it's not just the US, it's spread around the world really, really quickly. What are you seeing? What's your concerns about it? And how do we get it right? Because it's so important in everything that we're trying to get right at the moment. It's so important.
Indeed it is. And I'm a believer in being pragmatic and being balanced about it, right? In what context are we applying the policies and the principles of diversity and kind of diversity of thought, diversity, gender diversity, the diversity of skills. To me, I've never seen it quite right? I've been in businesses where I, as a people leader, had to abide by policy KPIs, what percentage of female I need to employ. And otherwise, I was showing in blinking red on that dashboard as not having employed enough female colleagues. And then now we are having, the opposite side where you say, oh, no, if you're too concerned about diversity, then you will get punished as a business. And so it's really flip-flopping quite a bit. And in both sides, we see some wrong behaviors in terms of what outcomes that drives, right? So I would like to see that one gets hired, get promoted, and holds a job because of the uniqueness of their skills and what they bring to work, what their contribution is, etc., despite of what gender they are, or to me, you could have very unique angles just because of your gender, and that would be extremely positive as a decision. However, when it starts working against what is the best for the job or what is the best for the outcome, and you have to just apply because there is policy requiring you to, we move away from kind of being real of what actually is needed and what skills are valuable and needed for certain jobs. And so talking about the employment context of things, when we had to apply diversity around solving big world problems like sustainability, ecology, and all this, I mean, of course, diversity is needed. There's no other way you can go about it. We need participation across genders, across different markets, across different walks of life in terms of background and experiences. So that goes by, and frankly, I would love to be able to say how we solve it and come up with a solution somehow. I think each and every one of us can contribute to a total positive, balanced outcome by applying policies and what we do in our everyday life and decision making. Kind of be smart and be pragmatic about it. Don't just do things for doing things just because someone creates a policy and wants to. I mean, it's easier said than done because I know there are economic implications of certain policy and rules, of course, and enforcement. But I think each and every one of us in our jobs and in our decision making every day could be focused on doing the right thing.
But we heard Elon Musk, obviously, I think it was last
Talking
year,
about presidents, I was going to say I hope my wife didn't still.
It worked that whole way through. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was just saying, we had
all the way to presence.
we had the anti-woke Musk last year say what we need is a handful of alpha males to run the world, and I just remember listening to it going, oh, for God's sake, it's alpha males, because any man that calls themselves an alpha male is obviously not. It's those alpha male types that actually got us into the problems we're in. They're not the ones that are going to get us out of these problems, And but like when you talk about climate, women are significantly more impacted by climate than men. Violence towards women goes up when there's an extreme weather event. All of these things. And then of course we've got our Indigenous brothers and sisters who need to be at every table where decisions are being made and have the solutions to the problems if we've got the courage to listen to them. So, it's like the whole anti-woke movement is just so anti-human. It's when David's talking about the future, and then we've got the tech broligarchs who very much sit in that space, and so there's no trust there. But we're leaping all over AI. The very same companies who delivered social media that basically destroyed democracy are now the same companies that own AI. So I'm not feeling too confident about where we're going, and they're just.
I want to add a little bit about a conversation I had yesterday with a young man from a refugee camp in Uganda. And he got in touch and he's wanted to talk about, kind of regenerative agriculture and stuff like that. And conversations sort of drifted along. And I was saying, why do you want to do this for? And he was saying, and it basically drifted to the fact that he has now moved away from kind of different countries. There are people from sort of 7, 8 different African countries, from kind of Sudan all the way over to Congo and so on, that have been displaced for various reasons. And there's like 170,000 people there. So it's a pretty big kind of, camp in that way. And the way he sees this is kind of his home. He wants to contribute to it because he feels that this is his home now. And when we talk about diversity, we look at it in terms of diversity in the jobs. We've just talked about how a lot of the jobs are disappearing. So the real kind of question, the real kind of opportunity, and the experimentation again in that way, is how do we allow the opportunity for people to discover what they can be, how their presence can be, how they build what Richard and I talk about in terms of their economic presence outside of a conventional job or as a sideline to a conventional job. And I talk to my children. I think that's really important because you cannot rely on your job being safe. You may be a medical doctor, but as kind of Joe's describing, that skill can be replaced away in that sense. And you may find that, the profitability of the hospital you may work at is going to drive a transition where you may find yourself out of a job in that way. And so how do you find that economic presence? How do you see your opportunities? And that, I think, is more the challenge. It's almost like it's forcing everything to go to a more decentralized state. And I talk about that. That's the point of the new book about an emergent economics, an economics where individuals genuinely are able to rediscover themselves as the agents that creates the economy, rather than as the agents that provides the labor to an economy. And that's where the challenging aspects of the diversity. And it's no longer a question of diversity, because when you actually look at the collection of all the organisms, that's what it is. You look at the organisms in the soil, you don't say, oh, that's diverse. You just say, wow, that's amazing. There's a huge abundance. This tends to be what you would say instead. And so the real word is, how do we look at our own human abundance, as opposed to thinking of it as requiring a diversity in jobs?
I want to bring sorry, I was muted. I want to bring Sanabera back because to me the diversity of life in soils is actually why soils are producing our food, right? So it's actually a good example. But Stenimir, I know you need to go. So as you're very much in the B2B space from a technology industry perspective. When you look ahead into the future, it doesn't have to be about tech. It can be about anything. What really gives you hope?
I think what gives me a hope is that we are going to be stronger and better and more productive. That's what it is. Have access to faster, better communication, which today's session is not an illustration of. So we can connect with each other better. we can exchange.
Actually, I think it is a great example, because we have communicated, and we haven't done so because the technology has been flawless. We've actually communicated.
Despite of that.
Yes.
Just imagine when it gets it right, when it works, how much better that's going to be.
It's two different things. It's the dialogue, and then there is technology, and we often confuse the two, and we end up putting the functional above the purpose.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It kind of makes sense. So, but yeah. So I know you need to go. So, just final thoughts. No.
I love your show, guys.
Thank you.
Always have something very interesting to bring and to bring up, and I'll continue being a big fan of yours.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, really appreciate you being here. All right. Bye.
See you guys.
All right. Let us bring us all up. So There we go. Thoughts?
There we go.
Richard, you were pretty
No.
quiet.
Yeah, it's technically, in terms of pure knowledge, it's something that David and Joe are far more adept at commenting. They've worked with this for a long time, and I think she touches on a few bits and pieces that are very, very dear to my heart, and it's got to do particularly with her argument about diversity, which is you cannot legislate diversity and create it by regulation. It is something that smart leaders, smart people in decision-making positions actually see as enhancing an organization's strength and a team's strength, wherever you are. And I often, when I was in a position to bring people in, I always went for someone with a background and an experience as far away as possible from mine. Because the last thing I want to work with is a little clone of myself, It's like, what does that bring to me in my ability to do my job better if I have, a Richard 20 years younger next to me? It's like completely detrimental to your ability to get better at what you do. I think it's so fundamental. And then I'm completely uninterested of, do you go to the right or the left when you go into the toilets, or, what's your religion this week and where did you grow up as such? It's irrelevant. It really is about getting better at what we do, and people with reasonable understanding of how you structure and lead organizations, I think, naturally have that ability. And I think she was very clear how she articulated it, and a lot better than me, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I obviously wouldn't have asked her to speak about it, but in Asia there's a saying where you've got the tech mafia, so the Indian mafia, and that basically means your entire leadership team is dominated by very, 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 very smart people from India. Or one of my examples was the Latin mafia. And basically the head of the business was from Latin America. His second was Latin America, and every single business head was Latin American, because obviously they're comfortable. They're comfortable and they speak the same language and, all that sort of stuff. And so, when I listen, what's the solution? I think it's education. And that's the soil example I thought was just really, really an interesting way of saying it, because, they think we've got 60 years left of healthy soil. If we don't have healthy soil, we can't grow our food, right? So by having diversity in our soil, it produces healthy soil, which produces our food, which produces all of the additional vegetation that we need for all of the different things that it works for, the ecosystems that it relies on, the pollinators. Like if you have diversity in your soil, the benefits just magnify. And here we are close to losing the diversity in our soil through insecticides, through extreme heat, through all of these other things, right? So we're going to stop being able to feed ourselves, right? So to me, maybe the soil analogy is a really great way of educating leaders on. Like, I know I appreciate what you're saying, Richard, but you're not common. You're not. It's more
the nicest
common.
thing anyone has ever said
what a
about
devastating thing to say to a man. You're not common.
You're not. People surround themselves with people who make them comfortable.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it actually scares me.
So maybe that's the focus, that education, right?
Yeah. I can see that.
Maybe I'll build out the soil analogy, and we can all share that as part of our training. Because, if you don't have, cities are designed by men. So the way roads are built, the way where toilets are, all that stuff, right? But a woman walking down the street with the pram doesn't have a footpath. There's not enough female toilets. There's, it's those sort of things. The seatbelt was designed for men, not for women,
I think it's really interesting. I was thinking about Iceland during the global financial crisis and how basically they brought in women to sort out the mess of the men.
Always. Women are brought in for crisis leadership, yeah. And then they're dumped afterwards if they get through it, yeah.
They
and blamed, yeah. Oh, there was an article a couple of weeks ago that lady that's behind Trump, the elderly lady that's like the Iron Maiden behind Trump. The headline was "MAGA's found a woman to blame for Trump." It's never the men; it's always the women.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I think the point about AI, I think there's two conversations here. There's AI and what it can do, and how, that 83% of companies have taken AI on within 2 years. Cloud took years to convince companies to take on, years. And that period of time, that was a stat that really blew my mind. But then the other side that David's talking about, that I obviously care about too, is the human side. And I like the global commons aspect of tech. It's got to be in our interest from a global commons perspective. And I think that's another great way of sort of looking at it. But they're two sides to the same conversation, right? But the conversations are separate at the moment. And I think that was what you were trying to bring into that, right?
Yeah, I think the thing about how AI has been incorporated into companies, right? I think you can get a little bit thrown off by people wanting to give the right answer to the right question, right? I mean, it's as far as companies go. I mean, I was listening to this a podcast where an investor was talking about what they look for, and what they're looking for now actually is the meaningful use or strategic use of AI, rather than just saying we also do AI. It's like basically big data and machine learning and all these buzzwords, which were also a compulsory sort of answer you had to have in your business if you want to have a viable business. So I think what it is a bit of a fashion thing as well, right? I mean, if you ask somebody right now, you've got to, if you're running a business, are you using AI? Do you have an AI plan? Even if you're not, I think the propensity is to want to go, oh, yes, I do, but I don't think it's as integrated as that high number there. I think if you went a bit deeper, you'll find that, we use ChatGPT. Yes, we have these sort of things, in play, but we haven't created a whole agentic workforce, or I don't think it's rolled out as big as that. I think it's always going to be a case of maybe, and these are just numbers coming out of my head, but I think it's probably going to be about 5% of companies that actually are strategically using it as a growth, a way of moving forward. And I think everybody else is just using it because it is actually a very convenient tool, right? It's just like computers. You can have everyone saying, we use computers. But some people are going to be doing word processing with it. Some people are going to be using some data crunching, and some people are really going to be using some other ways to sort things out. And it's still the same answer, right? We're using computers, but it's a different way of using the tool.
I agree with you, Joe, but I think there's a different frenzy here than I've seen in past tech evolutions. And I think the EU's decision this week on data privacy and data use in AI was a real sort of backflip. Did you, David or Richard, did you see that?
I saw the headline, but I didn't read through the whole process behind the thinking, what it practically means. Yeah.
But it was a real about turn, because, the EU is that one region of the world that comes up with laws that eventually get rolled out. So it was a bit of a shock to see that happen. But I think that's the frenzy that this time is representing. There's a lot of fear in the messaging. You've got to do it, because if we don't do it, China's going to do it. That sort of messaging. Even though most people who are just sitting there going, we don't understand why. But obviously the fear is so great that there's obviously a reason that that I think that's sort of at play. But and the speed of change of AI, like it's a teenager in 2 years, right? So it'll be a 30-year-old in the next 2 years, sort of thing.
Well, I think it's what's different is essentially you've missed this kind of long period of early adopters. Typically, the technology that the people get, and now I'm a late adopter to any kind of technology. I didn't get a mobile phone until people were sort of saying, "What the hell are you doing?" kind of thing.
That was typical for a finance industry person. You guys were the last.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then you became
Yeah.
the most obnoxious mobile phone users. That was my
I know,
observation of all my
as well.
friends.
But there was nothing better than being at a restaurant in the evening and having the maitre d' coming over with a landline saying, "There's a call for you, Mr. in your office." Then you feel really important.
Right. Okay.
When
Well,
everyone else
status thing, right?
brought out
Yeah.
their mobiles,
You know,
no, sorry.
that's
They rolled
sort
it
of
in on a
status
little
thing.
trolley to you.
Yeah. Well, you
But
lived in a different world to me, Richard.
But I think the difference of the AI is that very early on, it had this overwhelming government policy to push it.
Yes.
You think of when ChatGPT came out, very quickly, there were kind of like national policies about AI to promote AI and how we need to go down that path. And you know, which basically means that it never had this proper growth phase. It became kind of overly invasive in some sense, in that way, and it's very much
around. It was around before ChatGPT. That was just like the consumer explosion. I mean, I've been using Otter AI for years. You know, when I was like, but I'm already using AI.
No, I mean, that was sort of the earlier part about, you know, kind of machine learning and all the rest of the stuff and so on. And, you know, I remember writing my first neural network back in the 1980s when I was working on these, you know, surface physics problems. And I thought maybe it can solve it for me. And what I found was that it's extremely difficult to code because it's so robust to mistakes. But it always comes up looking reasonable, and you can't tell whether it's right or wrong. That was back in sort of 1982. The same thing could probably be said about, you know, kind of the responses you might get today.
And the Godfathers have said exactly what you've said.
And so I think what you have is the risk of what you have is whenever governments get involved, it tends to create the mother of all kind of bubbles in a sense. And the reason is because they can't burst, because the governments are behind it, pushing it. And when you make it into a matter of national security, they're not allowed to burst. And that's where we are. Yeah. And that's what the EU policy change of softening the controls and those sort of things are effectively doing, because it's trying to say, you know, China's going to get an AI. We mustn't allow that. We've got to get ahead of it. And all the financing is going to go that way, and all the policies, and, you know, if you're a business, you have to use it. You have to go along and think about it. And, you know, the NHS, the innovations to the National Health Service in the UK at the moment, is not about how you deliver better service, it's about how you deploy AI in the guise of delivering a better service.
Yeah. All right, shall we move on to the news that we're not going to talk about? Joe, did you want to say something before we do? You had a look of pain on your face.
Well, I was going to say the thing about where we are is we tend to look at time. We forget the growth stages actually that we're not aware of. Like you think about mobile phones and you think, well, 2007 was the big year it changed, and then all that stuff happened from that particular point, right? Mobile phones actually the evolution of the computer, which began way back in the 60s, which actually began even earlier, you know, with math and other stuff as well. So it's an evolution that has come to the gate and finally suddenly taken off, and we go like, oh, now it's just a big, huge, it's only taken this amount of time to be a teenager. I can literally remember using AI 20 years ago, right? Because I'm in the music industry. I'm not in the music industry. I work on radio. We had things that we would try to work on in terms of computers to try and work out how to play music that was suitable. So we worked very hard at trying to figure out how to do a more human choice for what song to play next on the radio. In audio, we used to do things like try to get tuning stuff and all that. So like auto tune or whatever. That's computational work. It really has to work on that. It's taken years for it to get really good. But we're actually at in terms of AI very far down the road. We're not just suddenly at the point where it's a teenager. AI to me, as far as I know, AI is literally a 23-year-old right now, right? And it may be older. You know that they've tried. I mean, if you think about it, the Turing test the fact that it was conceived in the first place, that is telling you when the idea to get going with that idea was, right? So it has been in progress all this time. We're way past the launch. It didn't just happen yesterday.
I think Stanimir was more talking about business, and when you look at the history of technology, right? There's all these pillars needed to be in place before the next stage could happen. Like you talk about mobile technology. I remember the consumers taking off of mobile phones was about the late 90s. That's when people around the world started to get phones. But it was the iPhone that really sort of, took it into a new space. And that was, of course, what was the iPod? It was integrating the iPod into a phone that's actually started the revolution. But we forget those sequence. And then cloud. I remember working at Microsoft trying to convince enterprise organizations to get in the cloud. And they're like, no. And then data privacy and data centers needed to be onshore because you couldn't trust that next country to host your country's data. And all those conversations, right? And when you saw it behind the scenes, you just saw so much wasn't happening. But the marketing was saying that so much was happening. But AI just feels different. But it was all those things that have been put in place that was necessary before that consumer adoption, which is what really happened in the last couple of years, the consumer adoption. There were tools that I was using, but I know what you mean. It's not as it appears.
Yeah, and the one thing just to keep in mind about how life works today is just that we've come into a time of acceleration, right? So the generation of knowledge and information, we're moving through it very quickly. The studies now, like for instance, your kids, right? If they're 2 years apart, they're literally a generation of information apart, right? So that is what's happening right now. That's why adoption seems to be as rapid as it is, because it does come out as quickly and the cycle is quicker because we have a feedback loop that is tightened, right? If you think about how traditional business used to work, you had to set up the business, you would take years to fail to figure out things along the way, and now we fail faster. I know that's not very popular, but that's the way it works. So you can try it now. You can hit 1,000 people. You can get a response very quickly. You can go like, okay, that's not working. And you can also reiterate.
I just don't agree with the fail faster as far as governments are concerned.
Really?
Tech I'm fine. Yeah, governments. All right, we're going to go on to this. I haven't featured myself yet. Hello, everyone. All right, this is the stuff that we're not going to talk about. So the Epstein story with all that sort of 26,000 email dumps happened before our show last week. But the frenzy around it didn't really take off until after our show. And I got to tell you, that was a sight to behold. But since then, it's just another normal week in the news, with the US president threatening to execute his political opponents after they made it. And they're all ex-veterans. They made a video for the military suggesting it's wise they do not carry out illegal orders. So that's going to get a lot of attention. It's really the last 24 hours it's broken. It's already getting a lot of attention. David shared an article. The UK COVID inquiry is out, and surprise, surprise, many lives would have been saved if it wasn't for Boris Johnson's chaotic government. I can guarantee you, if you want to follow a government that's really methodical and follows the science, I would suggest the Singapore government. From Thailand, I was following the Singapore government. Italy has faced horrendous floods this week. Richard, you're not up in that region where that's been flooded, are you?
No, but it's been quite wet, and walking out through the main river that splits the town, you can tell the water levels are very high compared to what they normally would be this time of the year. Because peak levels would be like April, May after the snow has melted. And we're not far off peak levels in the river. So I think a few of the houses next to it are on high alert. Okay.
Well, we've talked about the flooding in Vietnam in recent weeks, and I don't know if you've seen it. So Hoi An, Da Nang, the same area has been flooded for the third time in 3 weeks. And this recent event has resulted in 41 dead so far. But if you don't care about Vietnam and you're a bit apathetic about what happens in other places, the region's coffee crops have also been impacted. So we can all expect even higher prices for our coffee. Ariana Grande was in Singapore this week, and an influencer in the crowd who is known for his attention-seeking behaviour leaped out and put his arms around her. So it set off a furor in Singapore. People are very unhappy about it. He's an Australian guy, and he's been given 9 days in jail. So let's hope having a criminal record will have an impact. Israel continues to honour the peace agreement. Obviously not. And this week it expanded its yellow line, the border, which isn't a physical line, it's just a concept. So all I would like to say is peace deal my ass. And finally, Megyn Kelly tried to justify raping girls as okay if they were 15, but not if they are 8. The US Coast Guard has decided it's no longer going to classify the swastika as an emblem of fascism and white supremacy. And then since I've heard that they're going to take that back. And the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, has been sentenced to death in her country over the recent student protests, which basically saw her escaping to India. So there's some of the news. So other than what's in the agenda, anything you guys noticed that I might have missed?
Well, you had all the things I wasn't going to talk about. Epstein, for example, I know nothing anymore about what's going on there. So wait for everybody to dig it all through whatever files they release and find out. Yeah.
All right.
I'm sure we haven't heard the last about it, but I'm not sure at this point whether it will have the really dramatic impact, because the people that would be concerned have taken preemptive action and perhaps reposition themselves. And I think, didn't Larry Summers resign from some position this week?
From all of his positions.
Yeah. And he does it preemptively, probably because when it gets released, there will be some mentioning of him here. Whether it's conspicuous or not, we don't know, and it's just speculation. But at this point, I'm struggling to see you will have an avalanche of news, whatever is being in these files.
Well, there's a lot of victims that could obviously say a lot. All right, so COP30. I'll just give you a quick summary. We woke up today to what sounds like a very intense fire, which sounds like they got it under control pretty quick. So, but some good news that's come out. I pretty much lost faith in COPs, I have to admit, and haven't been paying as much attention as I normally do. I want it to work, I really do. But one good announcement was Korea and Bahrain have joined the coal to clean transition at COP30. Now, South Korea operates the 7th largest coal fleet in the world, so that's an important one. But there's a group called Powering Past Coal Alliance, PPCA, and it's a coalition of more than 180 governments, companies, and organisations who are dedicated to phasing out coal. So that's a piece of good news. Extreme heat, ironically, seems to be having a massive impact on the attendees. A lot of the facilities just aren't cutting it at all. But it is COP30, so a bit relevant. And the other thing that I think is good news is there is a real momentum to make a formal commitment to fighting back against climate disinformation. So I think this is a good thing, especially if they can succeed, because I want to sort of talk about some concerns, and I'm interested to know if you are also noticing it. The digital conversation has really changed. So there are 3 stages to climate denial and misinformation. So the first is denial. So climate change isn't happening. We moved on from that, I reckon, 12 months ago, maybe, to delay. And it's happening, but it's not caused by humans. It's too expensive to fix. Technology will solve it. So they're the sort of 3 categories of delay. And so we've been here for a while, and it's all about trying to minimize and diminish the size of the problem. It provides endless excuses for inaction, and it also argues about how much, who, and to what extent, and it's all about delay. But the third is diversification, deflection, and it's too late to do anything, or other countries should act first. So we're definitely in stage 3, And I think the big shift to stage 3 was after Bill Gates' memo, which why I think that was so dangerous in the first place. So stage 3 is typified by climate solutions won't work, climate science and the climate movement are unreliable, and the impacts of global warming are beneficial or harmless. And so just listen out for those statements or variations of those statements, and you'll understand what you're hearing. So some of the typical denial arguments are tackling the climate scientists' credibility and motives, which, God, those guys and gals must be so exhausted by now. They've been fighting this fight for such a long time. Climate action is economically harmful. Arguing that climate advocates are hypocritical. That's a big one, by the way. Suggesting natural climate variation explains current warming, and promoting fossil fuel production is beneficial. So one of the common themes I'm seeing is it's money driving activism. And the only money that is being made, I'm going to say this every time, by the existing businesses operating business as usual, and by the people who are being paid like influencers to share their speaking points. Nobody else is making any money here. Nobody. Trust me, the 3 of us are in the climate movement. We're not making money from doing this, right? We're also hearing things like the scientists don't know what they're talking about. We've only got 150 years of climate data, which is absolute and utter bullshit, right? So not just the ice cores, not just the tree rings, not just the ocean sediment, just the stratigraphy, right? That we can go down layers and layers and layers into Earth's history back millions of years. The data is very, very clear. And so in my where I put the weekend reads, the world news, I shared a video by a guy called Victor Davis Hansen, and it's titled "AI is Challenging Climate Change Orthodoxy." And to me, it's a perfect example of how climate change and climate denial gets wrapped up with some truths to support the argument. So conspiracy theories always have some truths, right? And I looked into this guy. I hadn't come across him before, and he works for one of the universities, and the part of the university that he works in is funded heavily by the fossil fuel industry and conservative think tanks. He's known as a climate denier. He's a classic representative of those that are common in the denier movement, which are usually men, white men, 60 and up.
Well, thank God for that.
Yeah, don't worry, you're not there yet. But seriously, if I was a young person right now, I'd want to punch every old person in the face who was out there speaking up against doing something to make the world a better place. But I think the bigger problem, and I'll hand it over to you, I think the real problem that concerns me is if someone was just coming into their awareness that something is really, really wrong, and they're just about ready to do something, they're just about ready to say something and get involved. I think what's happening now, and it's happening on a big scale. So I pay attention across sort of the social media sort of conversation, right? It's happening at a scale where I think those people will step back again. And I think it's really, really dangerous because we haven't got time for this. We really don't have time for this. Are any of you noticing what's going on and what's being fed out there that's very disingenuous? Anyone want to jump in?
I'm not sure if it's there's definitely a mellowing of the kind of enthusiasm towards climate action. So we go back to when Richard and I kind of first saw that IPCC AR6 chart back in 2021, I think.
Even 2020, possibly.
Yeah, and we were looking at because it was after we left Horizon, so we left at the end of 2020. So I think it was 2021. It was coming up. COP26 was going to happen somewhere along the line, and we saw this chart of soil moisture, and we thought, hey, let's just draw in there where we think where we know the major agricultural regions are, and those were going brown. And we looked at each other and we thought, that's a problem, And there was a kind of a huge wave. So we felt ourselves as very much part of that kind of, consciousness about it. And maybe it was because, kind of it was COVID, there was more concerns about environment and stuff, but there was actually more political kind of face given to it in that respect. And since it has pulled back a lot, because I think for a number of reasons, and some of it is because I think we have lost the ability, we have lost the whole thing about what are we trying to fix the climate for. And it's become about fixing the climate. And so the connection has kind of disappeared. And the more we kind of emphasize about what we've been fixing it for, and that's kind of an important element. And the other element is that we have totally failed, I think, the climate kind of population, the climate aware kind of populace as such. We focus too much on the science. And this is kind of really weird thing to say because, I still think of myself as a scientist and all the rest of it. What matters in the sense is the consequence of what the science implies to us today. So that's where Richard and I seeing that chart kind of thought. I mean, this was what happens if it was 4 degrees and then 2 degrees and so on, which is way beyond when we thought about that. But from our kind of background of trading in that way, if you think a bank is going to go bankrupt, you don't put your money in it. If you've got money in there, you take it out now. You don't wait for the bankruptcy to happen before you go and act. And the point about it is that the world's kind of countries and economies and things are going to start doing that. That's how we get the conflicts. That's how we get the price increases. And that's how we get kind of the disagreement with everybody around and all the rest that we're seeing. So that's what we were seeing. And we were seeing that connection into our lives today. My example is people talk about Hurricane Melissa in terms of the damage that it does to the places there, and the attribution study says something like that might be 10% of it might be due to climate change or whatever it is in some things of that kind. But the consequence, whatever the cause you may want to think about, is that 3 to 5 million people go to Jamaica. They're now going to rebook their holidays. And so the local spa weekend I was hoping to get with my wife is now gone up in price. And that's the kind of chain of consequence that we really don't make the point. And the point that you just said about the coffee, that's why coffee is going to keep increasing in price. That's the connection that is actually the one that makes people sort of think, oh, why would I want to fix it for? I want to fix it so that I can have my coffee. Whatever the reason. If it's just fixing the climate as the way it's described, and the COP conference is all about fixing the climate in that sense, it gets lost. And the other side of the problem is there's this constant thing that if you agree on saying it needs $1 trillion and someone needs to pay you $1 trillion, it doesn't go anywhere because no one's going to pay you $1 trillion. And that's the other part of the problem, is that we have a total failure to accept reality, which is the financing everybody's talking about is not going to come. And the more you increase the financing, the less chance it's going to come. If you come to me and says, I need 100 quid for this, could you help me out? That's okay. That's one thing. I might mull over it for a while. But if you then come along and says, oh, I need another 20 for that, and I need another 200 for that, and I need another 50 for that, and they're all really important, we can't live without it. By now, you've kind of raised it to whatever that sum is. I wasn't counting, but and it's the fact that you keep asking for more money means that whoever has the money is going to back away. The whole psychology of the climate thing is completely wrong. The more money you're going to ask to say rich countries need to pay, and you keep adding to some of it, the more they're going to back away. And so they're going to pull away, and they don't want to talk about it. Disappears off the news. It disappears off their policies. Everything gets softened. That's how that's what it is.
Yeah, I do think there's a side that's missing. So people on the climate side are being held responsible for not communicating. People who are aware of what's going on are being held as responsible for not communicating effectively and being blamed. The media is the one that's saying, oh, everyone's softening. The research doesn't indicate that, by the way, David. So I think there's some other little games going on here as well.
No, the research. I mean, the research saying that actually action is increasing, activities is increasing towards
and
that.
concern.
That's absolutely right. What it's not doing is it's not addressing oil and gas and coal. It's not really addressing their use, because McKinsey had this report out in last month about global energy outlook to 2050, and it said it was making a correction to its projection previously. It now no longer thinks that the oil and gas and coal are going to peak. They think that if India grows at a pace that is commensurate with trying to catch up with China, which basically means I think India's GDP per capita is a few $1,000s, and China's is like, low teens in dollars, which is say that if it aims to reach that by 2050, then the use of all those energy as sources of energy will continue to increase. And if you then put on top of that the next layer of the countries in Africa and the populations there and those kind of things.
Let's look at Indonesia and their investment in coal mines, right?
Right. And so it doesn't address that part. And none of these approaches addresses the point made in BP's own energy kind of outlook in terms of what you need that came out this year. The chief economist, Spencer Dale, made this point of saying, if we want to stay below 2 degree of warming by 2050, we have to reduce our total energy use after the transition of it to the renewables and stuff by something like 20% from current levels. The projections of it is it will keep increase.
Yeah.
So that aspect is not being addressed by any of these things. What these things are addressing is how we can keep depleting it, keep using it, and eventually the future we will be in the nice new stuff. But this is the same as kind of saying, you just keep depleting the soil and somehow we will get to a nicer path along there. It's The Unsustainable Truth started with our book. The Unsustainable Truth started with taking the California water policy as an example. And California has been having all these problems of overuse of underground water, and the ground is sinking and the sea's coming in and all those things along. And there's this statewide plan about how to manage it. And each kind of region, each county and each city has to submit their plans. And all of them is about how they're going to do the better thing in the future while continuing the use that they have.
Yeah.
So the result is they will actually run out of the water, but they will be in a better position in from the perspective what they then use, but they will still have run out of water.
Yeah.
And that's what we're lacking. That's the part that we're lacking.
Yeah. But as we do the syncing up every week, right? But then I'm sure you've experienced as well when you do it with people face to face, they don't like it. They don't want to hear it. So I don't think the climate communicators should be blamed because it's the least receptive audience I've ever come across. Nobody wants to face the reality of the time. And when you connect the dots for people, people are just like, no, I don't want to. Stop. The censorship is really, I've never seen anything like it. But let's go on to the global economy, US politics, and AI. That nice little mesh of stuff. But I'm going to hand it over. Who wants to start? Richard, did you have a chance? So some big story broke about AI and NVIDIA's valuation overnight. I didn't have a chance. I only just saw it just before we started. Did you have a chance to have a look at it, Richard?
Yeah, I did, and had a long discussion very late last night with an old friend who basically thinks that this is the nail in the coffin for what he would describe as the AI bubble in valuations. And we've talked about it previously a little bit, that you have really got shades and reminiscence of the past in what's going on here, how you have a very, very circular, incestuous relationship by all the companies that are involved in this, and how they effectively boost their numbers by buying things from each other and investing in each other. So you you more or less account for the things twice in both companies' balance sheet. But outside of this circle, is there really demand? And is there really the possibility to make your investments profitable? NVIDIA's numbers showed a few things that were very, very alarming. You had Jensen out speaking about absolutely crazy demand, but at the same time, their gross margin was declining for the chips they're making. And if you have crazy demand, most people would argue that if you can't boost your gross margins, then demand probably isn't that crazy. And the second, for me, even more alarming aspect is the amount of days it takes for them to get paid. Historically, the chip manufacturers get paid about 40 days from delivery. NVIDIA, I think, was at, can't remember the exact number, 53 in the last quarter. And it now shot up by an extra 12 days or something like that. And that tallies extremely well with what Michael Burry was saying when he had to make his shorting of NVIDIA stock by the buying of puts public on the 15th when they disclosed it. He says they are effectively not accounting appropriately because they're not taking depreciation as they should. Because you are in a business where old stuff gets obsolete extremely quickly, and they are basically depreciating things at a too low rate. And if you tallied it up with the industry average, NVIDIA's number were actually below mean expectations. And I think the market kind of realized that quite quickly. And
can you just explain to people why that from 40 days to 53 days being paid, why does that matter?
Well, it means two things. You are not having a position of leverage when you can force the people that allegedly are queuing up because demand is so crazy to pay on time. They are managing to negotiate a longer payment schedule on the stuff they buy, possibly because they can't buy quicker than that. But it means that you are constantly increasing your working capital rather than getting the cash flow through. So you are actually getting paid through receivables rather than cash, which is quite a dramatic difference. And all the really great accounting frauds we have seen in the last 30 years, Lucent and Enron and WorldCom, they were all like this, that they were selling stuff to their clients and financing it for them. The vendor financing model.
Well, I think another way of looking at that is, if there's someone, you go to a store and you see something and they says, you can buy it, you don't have to pay for a year. Basically you get it for free for a year or whatever it is. Then, it's not something that that's in that great demand. No. So I think it's really more that point is that, the demand for it, whatever the accounting stuff and the accounting hole and all the rest of it, if it really is in such great demand, you wouldn't have to worry about the fact that it is extending out in the payment. But the fact that it's extending out in the payment is kind of saying it's really not in that great demand.
Correct. And, the other aspect that has to be a worry with anyone with a sense of financial history is that whenever you get into the position where these companies are investing in each other, it's effectively like building a shield or attempting to build a shield from the market's ability to price your stock correctly. It's the classic Japanese cross-holding from 35 years ago. And we all know how that ended.
Yeah.
It's such a red flag for me and has been over the last year that you cannot ignore the fact that they are effectively pumping up each other's stock prices by buying stock in each other. And I think it is a huge worry, whether it's, the straw that broke the camel's back. My old friend seems to think so, because we've had the combination of this with the fact that some very, very important holders have opted to sell stock in NVIDIA. And you have to argue that SoftBank and Peter Thiel have better insight into what NVIDIA is doing than your average investor. And if they opted to sell, it probably means they are not in love with what they're seeing.
Well, I think they know they're already invested in it, so I think I'm less bearish of what it means. But
So
yeah.
I'm glad you brought the Peter Thiel thing up. So can I ask just for everyone, because I know a lot of this stuff is really common sense to the three of you, but I know for a lot of people, they sort of sit there and they see the headlines and they're like, I don't, this doesn't look good. So what does it mean for the global economy? How quickly will we see something happen? And how's it going to impact? Because there's so many crises facing people at the moment. So when it comes to this one, because it's obviously, we all lived through the .com boom and bust, and we've been around for the financial crises and all sorts of stuff. So what's next now that this conversation has started?
Well, the basic issue is the following. AI is produced by these big, massive computers running behind the scenes somewhere. And so these massive computers need silicon chips, and they need kind of programmers and all those things along with it. And the companies that produce the chips are supported by the companies that produce the AI out of it. And the companies that kind of pass it on to the consumers are the same companies along the way, just kind of different side, different branches, segmented parts of it. And so what's happening is that the industry is buying each other and paying for the services of each other. It's a bit like, imagine that you run a bus service, but the company that produced the bus is actually the bus company, and they buy it from that way. And the customers are really the bus company's employees, effectively. That comes along through. So all the months, the bus company pays his employees for them to pay for the bus, for them to get on it, and so it raises the price of these things and makes it look fantastic. And then the company that produces the bus is owned by the bus company, and so it's all kind of very internal thing. Now, what the risk of it is, this can collapse, which is fine. That's no problem with that. It's just like, whoosh, it just disappears, and there's no bus company. That's not a problem. The problem is the rest of the people are now saying, get rid of your cars. You can't travel by bicycle. You need to go and get a bus now, and in all these things. So that's what's happening when they say, get rid of your jobs in your company. You need to use the AI, get rid of all those things. And that's beginning to fizzle around. As that go along, you end up having the rest of the whole economy depend on this bubble. So if this bubble then goes away, then you suddenly find actually people can't get to work. All those things don't work anymore. But by that time, they'd have spent all their money, which has disappeared off in this bubble because because they buy high into very high valuation effectively, which is sort of saying, you buy a car that's sticker price is $100,000 for whatever reason, but it's only worth 10. So you go along and you pay.
Wait. That's Singapore, by the way, David.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was going to say that about the bus ownership as well.
Yes. And so you come out of it and you think, oh my God, this is crazy kind of thing. And you suddenly found that 90,000 has gone in that way. So you can't hire back someone because you've lost all your money in paying for the services and all those things along. So for the company and the people in there, this is great. And typically what they do is they're smart. They cash out and do all those things. Then they leave the bankruptcy to happen and things, and they walk away. The rest of it gets impacted. The more governments end up kind of pushing to say this is a must that we must go forward in, the more they elevate this bubble that it creates. Bubble is not back to what our guests were saying earlier. There's real functionality that it provides, but the valuation and the chain of kind of the infrastructure building and all those things is very much its own bubble in that way. Enron was an example, huge, massive energy trading company. Energy is real, but the way it made money and said it made money was not. And all the people that serviced Enron and that used Enron became caught by its collapse in that same way.
And AI is pretty much penetrated everyone, right? 82% of businesses have got some form of AI. So that's that's
Absolutely.
a bigger risk, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but,
But then, of course,
the thing about
but then, of course, you've got the investors in AI, which would also be the pension funds.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
so there's what, so talk through that. Just, I'm trying to make it relevant for people who, you know, maybe they're not in business or they're not investors, they're just at the receiving end.
Richard?
Well, to put it simply, your average pension fund holds a mix of assets. The largest portion of those assets would at the moment be equities, because it's kind of where modern portfolio theory have drifted towards. So to make it really simple, let's assume that it's 50% of your whole pension is held in public stocks, public equities. The problem with the AI trade as such is that these 10 companies that dominate the US stock market, and the US stock market totally dominates the global stock market in valuation, have never been a bigger share of the stock market in the entire 160-year history we have data for. The top 10 companies in the US are 40% of the market. And if you say that your stock portfolio is 60% US, which it typically is, even a bit more, but let's make it simple, then you effectively hold 25% of your whole pension wealth is held in these names. A quarter of what you have saved towards sits in Nvidia, Microsoft, Meta, etc. stock. And if they get a massive repricing, it's going to affect your pension pot quite significantly. The concentration of names you hold has never been bigger in the history of modern finance, because they are the names that are worth the most. So your average fund will, per definition, on average, hold that amount.
That's the direct hit, and then all the other companies are reliant on them. So these top 10 companies are Nvidia, which makes the chips, Apple, which is kind of this whole kind of process along, Microsoft, Google, Alphabet now, Amazon, Meta. So they're all the companies that are part of this. Tesla's in there too. That are part of this. So for the ordinary person who goes out there, earns some money, gets a salary of a few hundred to a few £1,000 a month, whichever it might be, has a mandatory requirement to save 8% of it in a pension every month. Then about at least a quarter, somewhere between a quarter to half of what they're saving, goes into what is appearing from what Richard said earlier about the report of Nvidia, what would very often be considered as a fraudulent accounting company. That's where, and be assured, it's the same in the others too. Nvidia is no different. It's the same in the others too. So at least a quarter of what you're saving is going into what is essentially financial fraud, just legalized.
Wow.
So that's how it hurts you.
So when Joe, do you want to jump in?
Well, I was going to say fraud, but I wasn't going to say fraud. I was going to say less than wholesome.
The word fraud is being used.
Yes. But it incorporates such a broad spectra of activities. So I tend to gravitate towards what Joe is expressing, that I'm sure they are within the boundaries of legality, because the directors would not have signed off on this otherwise. However, and here AI comes back to bite you. This would have taken maybe 2-3 days for your average equity analyst to go through and dissect, and AI does it in 15 minutes. You feed it all in, they plug all the key metrics out, and then you get 250 various measurements on evolution from last quarter to this. And the ones that stick out is lower gross margins despite a higher mix of newer chips. Well, that doesn't tally on the top of it, because you're going to charge a better margin on the newer stuff than the older stuff. And you're getting paid later and later for the stuff you're selling to your clients. It smells. Of course it does.
So,
but it's not fraud
sorry.
in the name of what the law says to them, but it's probably fraud to what the market thinks of.
Right.
So yeah.
So I want to. I want to. Can I just ask it? Can I just ask it?
Sorry.
So, your future savings that are going to keep your future going are at risk. A big chunk of it, which is already at risk for multiple other reasons. But anyway, just for now, it's for that. Yeah. Your job's at risk because you could lose it because of AI, and your children's futures are at risk because they can't even get started in a job. So I think people are financially very, very exposed right now. And if you live in a place where, extreme weather events are happening, you've lost your insurance, you might lose your house, and that might not happen yet, but it might be coming. But, that's a lot of very, very sort of unsteady stuff going on in the world right now. So is there any advice that you could give to people right now about sort of, about paying attention and about making decisions for themselves and for their families and their communities?
I think you've said it. Make the decisions for yourself, for your communities. Paying attention to what really, what is that sacred spark in you? What is that really saying? Because everything else is going to worry you, and you just have to accept it. There's this thing I watched yesterday. A friend passed me this from Marsha Linehan about radical acceptance, which is accept reality as what it is.
Yeah.
Just do that and go from there. And it's painful to accept it. It will be even more painful not accepting it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we started our whole series with radical we said acceptance, but it really is about radical acceptance. All right, Joe. Yeah. You were going to talk, and we're getting too excited.
No, I done my little piece of pepper and salt on that. That's all I had really, because I looked at it and went, when the market does what it does, there's something behind it. When I heard about the sell off by a pretty big investor, how they divested their interest in it, I thought, well, that sounds weird. It really sounded very weird, and now, of course, we realize what the fire was, right? That was a smoke, and now the fire has been revealed.
So did he? Was that an insider trading with Thiel? But it was also 75% of Tesla, right?
I think when you are sitting on something where you think this could collapse the market, you're probably going to even out your positions on other things as well. As in, like, I think this could have been much, much worse. As in, like, if there wasn't some kind of other thing that came in, I'm not, don't quote me on this, but I think what happened was Walmart delivered some good numbers as well that kind of gave some sort of buoyancy to the market. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it could have been much more of a collapse. And this word about this thing here happening wasn't quite as well known by people. I mean, just like even with Stanimira, who's actually in the industry, she hadn't heard about it as well. So that word is making its way through the market. The smart money knows really quickly. The smart money left yesterday, but they're all piling on at the exit now, right? So tonight could be very interesting.
What does anyone have any thoughts on why Thiel took a 75% cut in Tesla?
Oh, he raised cash, and he kind of raised cash for two levels that Joe commented on, right? The first thing is, that this is somewhat of a bubble, and I need to de-risk as much as I can. And because he has to report every 3 months, it's probably worth doing it as much as you can, because if you sell one, people are going to start asking questions about your other holdings. So you kind of clear the board and you get rid of as much thing as you can before you're forced to report. And obviously the bullish interpretation is that he now has so many other ventures he wants to plow and redeploy that cash into. And that remains to be seen, whether it was pure cash raise or, as SoftBank, for example, claimed that they needed the money for all their other ventures. And actually they were very bullish about the whole story. And that remains to be seen. The proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. All right. So just
No,
moving on, because I know Richard's. Yeah, David.
I just want to add, where NVIDIA is at the moment, it's kind of like back in August, where it's back in August. If you've gone away for 3 months, come back, nothing has changed. In
It's
that way.
It's not worth 5 trillion anymore.
No, it's what, what's a trillion between friends,
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly. So and there are plenty of people, and there is still this inflow of money every month, tens to hundreds of billions of dollars that comes in every month that has to buy. You are mandated by law to buy. You mustn't forget that in terms of what's going to happen and all the rest of it. Because
explain that where that's coming from, David. Just be really specific. I know what you mean, but
because in the UK, for example, you're required to contribute to a pension, personal pension. So something like 8% of your income goes into that, or 5% topped up by your employer by something by the
3.
extra bits.
Yeah, 5
by
plus
3.
3.
So that's 8% in total of kind of your that sort of money goes into buying some investments. There are not enough good skill-based investment opportunities to take that vast amount of money of kind of tens to hundreds of billions every month that comes in order to do that. So most of that money goes into non-skill-based investing, which is basically just buy what there is.
Yeah.
So as Richard is saying, the top 10 companies represent 40% of that US market, which basically represents most of the world's equity value. So you're going to be buying that regardless of whether it is dodgy or not, because it's not skill-based. You're just buying it.
Yeah.
So there is that vast tide of money coming in that will support all of this thing.
It's funny. So I'm trying to convince David and Richard to work with me on this PowerPoint, which really talks about pensions growth, right? So I get advertised pensions in Singapore, and I also get advertised pensions in India for some reason. Obviously Australia. Yeah. It could just be the random. I'm over 50. They want to talk to me. I'm in Asia, sort of advertising, but pension growth worldwide has grown significantly. So it's not just your country; it's a global industry that's grown. As the middle class has grown, the pension industry has grown. So there's more money to buy into more things, which eventually that's where we are. But Joe, I wanted to get your thoughts on Microsoft, NVIDIA investing in Anthropic, and if you don't know Anthropic, they're responsible for Claude, which is my favorite AI tool, but just the general one. But yeah, what did you think of that? Especially because of the OpenAI sort of relationship that Microsoft sort of started with. I thought it was pretty interesting.
I mean, I think it's just in terms of being one of the very popular ones. They are one of the most popular platforms in terms of people who use. I mean, if you're using AI to code, right? They say Claude is one of the best places to go. And so, in terms of that traction or market traction, I think it's very, very high. I think it's more about market share acquisition rather than it is about the specific technology, because I think both platforms can actually do a certain amount of coding, but basically the credibility that Claude has is what gives you a greater reach. And I don't think they're making a play for the technology as much as the market share.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right. Richard, you're about to jump off. Is there anything you wanted to say before you go? And we wish your aunt well.
Thank you so much. I know she will appreciate it. It's not a great story, but there we are. No, I think we touched upon one of the more important issues earlier, which was COP, and it's ongoing, and it's not making the headlines. And it's not making the headlines largely because it has become irrelevant. It's no longer even perceived as a place where decisions are being made, let alone the fact that there were never important decisions made there. But it's not even perceived as such. And that should be real food for thought.
Yeah.
Because if you can't use forums like that to at least agree on some basic visions and outline some kind of path of how you want to tackle the ongoing crisis, then you need to go back to basics, which might ultimately prove very beneficial and bullish, because it will be up to us as individuals how we choose to walk the path going forward.
Yeah. Well said.
Which is the proposal in my book.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
just giving a plug, driving at nature's face. My book, which is really what Richard is talking about, how individuals can have that agency.
All right.
There
So
you
what
go.
I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go through. All right. See, Richard, have a good
See you.
week. Good luck and happy weekend.
Thank you.
I'm going to go through a few of the pieces that I pulled out. I'll just mention them unless anyone wants to stop and discuss them. Okay. So the first is the UN Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Program released a report. And they're saying there's a major hunger emergency with acute food insecurity set to worsen in 16 countries. So the highest risks are Sudan, Palestine, South Sudan, Mali, Haiti, and Yemen. The other countries of very high concern include the Democratic Republic of Congo, Myanmar, Nigeria, Somalia, Syria, and Afghanistan. And some other hot spots are Burkina Faso, Chad, Kenya, and the Rohingya refugees, obviously, in Bangladesh. So what's driving the conflict? The majority, 14 of the 16, conflict and violence. Economic shocks, which we're going to see worsening. Climate extremes and reduced humanitarian aid. So they're talking about millions dying from the cuts to USAID. So that's a big one. The Global Methane Report 2025 came out. Just jump in if you want to talk about anything. And I thought they're talking about it's the first comprehensive global stocktake of global emissions since the 2030 Global Methane Pledge, which was signed in 2020. But it's going to come down, even though global methane emissions are still rising. So I like the optimism. There's a point where there's human methane emissions, and then there's nature's methane emissions. And once nature passes humans, we pretty much that's a tipping point. So it's a powerful greenhouse gas, 30 times stronger than CO2. So it's important. World food hunger, methane.
I think it's helpful. It's helpful to understand how it's stronger. So the way it works is that the planet itself absorbs a lot of sunlight and it gets warmed up, and that heat kind of escapes back out. And the heat escapes out in terms of kind of in terms of different radiations, in terms of kind of infrared. Some of it is infrared, some of it is kind of like invisible stuff, and some of it is kind of other spectrum along. And what happens is that these gases, the greenhouse gases, covers little bits of that spectrum. So if you have a dirty window and if you have a clean window and you put a little bit of dirt on it, it actually covers a lot of the light that will go out. But if it was already dirty, you cover a little bit more dirt on it, then you kind of don't actually lose that much more light that can go out there. In this case, the light is the heat. So if you imagine that you covered it up with some things like CO2 of one bit, and now you start covering the other bits, and that's what the methane does. So you end up with a much more bigger impact.
Yeah.
Because in the bits that's left that wasn't covered, you're now covering it. And that's how it has a much greater impact as a result. And it's worth doing that, because effectively, in this, what was a clean window, you've kind of smeared a bit of it, and now you're smearing all the others. And what people don't talk about in methane is that it's associated from the man-made side with natural gas. And liquefied natural gas is the biggest growing energy infrastructure.
Yeah.
At the moment.
And could easily be captured, so it's considered one of the easy ones, but it's also landfill sites.
Well, the economics of it is quite different, because what you have is two things. One side of it is that you always have some leaks, so you can say you can do that. The other side of it is that as a byproduct, along with producing oil, which is one part of it, it's not economically profitable to capture it versus just allowing it to leak.
Yeah.
And that's where
it's
it's kind of flaring and
not
things go.
profitable. Yeah, right.
So what you end up with is a situation where you're too far away to capture it, and transporting it makes it costly, and all the other bits. And so inevitably you leak until you're found out.
Yeah. But it's considered one of the things that we could relatively easily do. It might cost money, but pay money now, save some money later, potentially. Another report that came out is AXA's Futures Risk Report. So I follow the insurance industry a lot when it comes to tracking the polycrisis. I find them the most honest as far as the realities. So basically, what they're highlighting is a world where the erosion of trust and social cohesion are making every crisis harder to solve. So this is basically the polycrisis, right? So divisive elections, trade wars, technological disruption. The world's risk landscape is undergoing a fundamental shift. For the first time in 5 years, climate change, while still the top concern, is it's losing its commanding lead as other anxieties close in. I've printed out the report. I'm going to read it all. But basically, the biggest risk that they're seeing now is fragmentation. And, a lot of what we talk about, it's like we're being so gaslit. We were talking about the BBC last week, which is obviously still an ongoing thing. We're being so gaslit on so many levels, where we're being convinced to get rid of things that are actually not in our interest to get rid of. But as far as being able to sort of control the narrative and control how we move forward, it suits the financial sort of industry and making money industries, but it doesn't suit us. And so the fragmentation is this division where there's these people who are like saying, the people in the UK going, no, we should keep the BBC. The BBC is good. We don't want it owned by the corporates. We can see what corporate media is. We can see how clickbait has taken off because the media doesn't know how to make any money. So just as an example, and then there's the other side who are saying, it's left leaning, it's woke, it's this and that, even though that's been disproven, but it doesn't matter. It's the fragmentation it's caused. That's not good for society. So take what's happening with the BBC story and amplify it around the world. Anything that fragments us is actually going to make it harder for us to deal with anything and to overcome the challenges we face. To me, that's the biggest danger. We've got to work out how to come back together, how to get trust back in our institutions. And obviously change is required for this to happen. I was listening to a Chasing Farage. The Nerve did a video on it. There was this guy who was what party is it? Voted for Farage's party. And he goes, we just need leaders who come in and just drop a bomb in the middle of it and change everything. And I think that is actually where people are, because that is what is actually required right now. So our choice is, do we want a far right bomb? Do we want a far left bomb? Do we want a bomb in the middle?
I don't think that's going to get us there. I think that would just fragment even more. I think we need to be asking, what are we wanting to fix all these problems for, and actually start having conversation about what that is, and bring ourselves back together. Because as I was mentioning before, you look at COP. Every COP has a new initiative. It's like, isn't there enough initiatives from the previous 29? Do we need a new initiative and a new demand? And because that's the fragmentation. Now you've got all these different things, and you now need to employ all these different people to consider how you're going to deliver that, and you need new budgets for all of those things. And none of it is really actually asking, we just want to come here and talk about what we want to fix it for.
Yeah.
And we just want to.
To me, the other question is, who do we want to be as we move through this time?
Yeah.
That's a question. Yeah. Because do we want to have walls up with people screaming to get in, and will we feel good being behind that wall, while we watch others suffer? Will we do we want to be those people? And if Marjorie Taylor Greene can almost turn into some sort of a very strange, nice person talking about that we're too divided, I think anything is possible. Right?
I was listening to a kind of a telling of history and where it's come from, and what we need is something like what happened after World War II. You need a friendly guerrilla, right? Mm-hmm. And the challenge right now is we don't have a friendly guerrilla. So we were talking earlier about the alpha, the whole thing about being led by the alpha male. It's not the alpha, I think, that is the problem. It's the problem, right? I think if you set someone who's an A-type person and the mission, I mean, if you think about missions, it's going to be somebody else, I think, equally driven, and it may not be a male. It may be someone else alpha. But you need that kind of energy that really says we're going to do this, or not one of those things where I'm going to round everybody up and say let's do this together, folks. You need someone kind of like rising up as well and saying, okay, we're going to do this, and if you don't want to do this, I'm sorry, you're part of the problem. Yeah. And a lot of stuff happens in the world because people want to avoid the unpleasantness of the person shouting or demanding or the threat of harm. I mean, I hate to go back to some of the way that I was parented as a child, but my mom and the belt got a lot of things done.
I know I've been able to raise a child with 2 children without the belt, but just in a different way. But different generations, right? No, it's funny. Like Iran's running out of water, right? So we've been hearing that story. There's lots of praying going on in the Middle East for rain. It's the worst drought. When they look at the rain, it's not just climate; it's mismanagement. There's a lot of reasons, right? But there was this one video that I shared, and basically what governments are being forced to do, and in Iran it's the same. Choose between environment degradation or jobs, and they're choosing jobs to keep people happy. And around it's quite sensitive at the moment because of everything that's been going on, so they're trying to keep the people under control. But if you keep choosing the jobs over environmental degradation, eventually there's not going to be any jobs, so you're just holding off the worst, which we're seeing. And I think everyone's going to have their Iran moment. And we've talked about it before, a benevolent dictator, if you don't get someone like a Lee Kuan Yew, I mean, he came in and he did what needed to be done, but it wasn't nice for everybody. The ideas of people we've got to protect our personal freedoms and our right to choose. Well, we're seeing it playing out that these people who are demanding that freedom, we saw it during the protests during COVID. We see it in lots of different ways, but those very people, when they get power, the first thing they try and do is stop other people having freedom, right? So at some point we're going to have to go.
Sounds like Les Miserables.
Yeah, right. But at some point we're going to have to go, okay, do we want to have a future? Yeah. Okay. In order to do that, we need a council of elders. So I think a council, there is a council of elders now, but I don't think it's actually just older people that are wise and in the position to do this job, but just use that term. And for a period of time, this is what the world's going to do. And we might get 70% of the world behind it. But that 30%, they're going to protest, they're going to carry on like pork chops like they already are. But we have to turn our backs to them now and move forward and say, this is what we're moving towards. Let's get going. Let's get to work.
I think that's the technocratic government. Italy had a technocratic government for a good while that managed to get it out of some of its problems. I don't know whether that will work globally at the moment because the challenges, what climate, when you talk about, it's not just climate mismanagement, is that climate exposes the mismanagement. Yeah. The climate issues exposes the mismanagement. Mismanagement's always there, no matter what we do. It's part of kind of the whole human psychology in that way. And because of that, it means that the challenges that we face are not solvable within the context of where of our governance that we have in that way. We always end up saying we need more money in order to solve these things. A lot of these things cannot, the money's not there, and getting the money makes them worse in some other form and create some other problems. So where is that step forward is back to this thing that I was saying with our guest along. We kind of have to start thinking about the economy as our product rather than we are the functional unit of the economy.
Yeah. I think that's good. All right, so I reckon we should wrap up. Oh, Joe, got a final statement?
No, I was just going to say that the missing piece there actually is power, right? I think philosophy is all one thing, and I believe very much in philosophy. I'm if possible, I would try and get a job as one, but there's too much work getting qualifications. I think the next bit is power. Where do you rally the power? How do you acquire the power? Because you're right. In reality, this is where the people have always had the power, but to galvanize, to be able to catalyze it so that it becomes something, and then you have movements like people power. That's the missing bit, and you do need. I mean, it comes down in the end to someone who can do something, right? So, if I may just throw this Ratty bit into that, in some ways, Trump was that guy. He's not if I heard a very interesting and somewhat disturbing thing the other day, and I had to think about it. Trump really wants to solve a lot of the problems. Right? It just happens to be he's not totally aligned with all our desires, but he wants to solve a lot of the problems. America is facing a very different situation than what it did after the war. In that time, America being the world's policeman made sense, because basically, in terms of global trade and all the stuff that's happening around the world, 40 cents of every dollar that was made basically became It was America's share of the take. Now it's gone down a lot, so it's completely changed in terms of what the math's about for America. So it's completely different now. So in a way, you need someone like Trump, as distasteful as it might be, who's on kind of the other side with the kind of charisma to push forward. And as with dictators, benevolent or otherwise, there'll be people rolled over.
Yeah, so the choice is, what sort of dictator do we want? I agree, I totally agree with you, right?
Yeah, I'm the other end, but anyway, that's me. I just don't want to end up saying.
In different countries can put up with different things, right? Yeah. Different cultures can deal with different things, right? So there's not a one size fits all approach to this, But I agree with Joe. But I think there needs to be a test. Like I think if you fit into the dark triad or the dark tetrad, you should never allowed to be in power. Right? that should be a basic,
I think my message for young people, young professionals out there, is that you guys need to come and create a brother and sisterhood together with a sense of solidarity about what it is that you want for yourselves in that way. And
but they will choose leaders. But they will choose leaders, David.
They may choose leaders, or structure will emerge.
Yeah.
I think the point is that structure will emerge. And if they do that with their eyes open, with a radical acceptance of what the world is at the moment in terms of what it is, then it's up to them to try and decide how that is. And I think we already judge what they should do by saying you will choose leaders. I don't know what they should do or what they will do, but they need to experiment and allow what emerges to emerge. But they need to experiment with it. We cling on too much to our existing models of governance.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. We need something new. And the other thing is, get off your ass and get off the couch you know, for the last 30, 40 years, everybody's life has gotten a little bit better, you know, so we've gotten more passive, and you know, the armchair critics and the trolling and all that. No, stop that. Get off your ass, get off the couch, get out there, do something, be part of something. Everyone's got a role to play now. To me, that's as simple as it is. Like, there's no more sitting back waiting for someone to come and save you, because nobody's going to come and save you. So we need to get involved. All right, what's keeping you distracted? Because I know David's got to go in 6 minutes. David, what's keeping you distracted?
I am going to go off with my son and get him to his driving test.
Oh, nice. How old is he?
He's mid-20s. So
he's only just doing it. Okay.
Yep. So he's it's his second/third time. The second time he forgot some documents that he needed, and so couldn't take it. So
right. Oh, well, good luck.
Yes.
Tell him to get a manual license if he can. There's opportunities in the mines if he needs a job.
Yes.
Joe?
Well, I've come around to slow horses, and I've finished the whole series. And now I'm in the process of trying not to let any kind of spoilers out while my wife catches up to me, the slow horse that she is.
Right. It's so good, right? Just from that very first scene on the couch, it's just, that's it. You're in. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yet. I mean, my wife keeps going on about it, and I haven't yet.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. It's so delicious and interesting, and the characters are just crazy. I will just say one word which will resonate with anybody who's seen the show, and especially we finished the most recent season, right? You need Roddick in your life.
I've always had one of them in my life. I love the nutbags. I think they're great. And it turns out he's an Aussie.
Oh yeah,
yeah, an Aussie, a former fitness trainer. I heard him interviewed with an Australian accent. And I'm like, what? Yeah. Okay, so I finally got through the first season of Invasion. It's a slow starter, but it's a really fascinating idea. I'm not really into those sort of shows typically, but I like the characters. But the one thing I have started is House of Guinness. Have any of you guys watched that yet?
Heard about it.
Yeah, right. So I had a little chapter in when I worked in the UK. I launched a porter beer for Guinness in the UK, and it was the first porter in like 75 years or something. So it was a really cool experience. So I'm interested in it, and it's like it goes back through some pretty significant chunks of history. Steve's saying all the weird ones are Aussie when we're talking about Roddick. But yeah, House of Guinness. It's the guys who did Peaky Blinders. It's actually the same set.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a big old brewery and fascinating. It's the family. Yeah, so I'm enjoying that. So about 3-4 episodes in, and I think that will keep me entertained for a while. Rchristmas movies are coming next.
Steve, be warned.
Yeah,
no. He's going to India next week, so I can get a week in without him around. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Stenimira, for joining us. It was really awesome to hear you. Great discussion as always. Just lots of different angles, and appreciate nuance, people. Nothing is as it seems. There's always a different way of looking at it. Would you agree, guys?
Yes. Good
absolutely. Yeah, always ask what else is there that you haven't seen. And by the way, just a reminder again, since you're all the way at the end here, if you haven't liked and subscribed and told your friends about the show, do that. You know, this is not about making money, because we're not going to do that, but we're trying to do something a little bit different.
But if you'd like to sponsor us, we'd happily take it.
Yes.
Cover the costs,
yes.
You know. Steve, I'm sure I wouldn't mind. Anyway, just great. It keeps me sane having these conversations every week. So enjoy your weekends. All right.
Yep. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.